Wyoming Territory, August 1884. Jedediah found her collapsed by the milepost, clutching broken ribs and whispering, "No more pain." What he did next, taking in a woman the whole territory would condemn him for protecting, would challenge everything the frontier stood for. She was Isabella, running from a past that had nearly killed her. He was a solitary rancher who'd learned that decent people helped others survive, when sanctuary meant defying society's judgment. Both discovered that healing required more courage than hiding. Their love would bloom quietly over one transformative summer while the frontier watched and whispered. Together, they'd prove that sometimes the most radical act is simply choosing to stay when the world expects you to run. Wyoming Territory in 1884 remained harsh frontier where women's legal rights were minimal and domestic violence was considered private family matter. Isolated homesteads dotted rangeland where neighbors lived miles apart, creating environment where abuse could continue unchecked, but also where sanctuary might be found. Social conventions demanded that decent women remain with their husbands regardless of treatment, while men who interfered in others' marriages faced community ostracism and potential violence. The frontier's masculine code emphasized property rights over human dignity, making Isabella's escape and Jedediah's protection of her revolutionary acts that challenged established power structures. Towns served as centers of gossip and moral judgment, where reputations could be destroyed by whispered speculation. Women traveling alone faced suspicion, while men who helped them risked accusations of impropriety or worse. Isabella fled an abusive marriage after years of escalating violence that nearly killed her. Educated and capable before marriage destroyed her confidence. She possessed inner strength that abuse had buried, but not eliminated. Her survival instincts had been sharpened by constant vigilance against her husband's unpredictable rages. Her apparent fragility masked determination to never again be victim. Having escaped once, she would fight to maintain freedom despite society's expectation that she return to proper marriage. Her healing journey required learning to trust again while rediscovering the person abuse had nearly erased. She carried guilt about leaving while believing she deserved the treatment she'd received, making recovery as much about self-forgiveness as physical healing. 35-year-old widower who'd lost his wife to childbirth complications 3 years earlier, leaving him isolated and wary of emotional attachment. His frontier upbringing emphasized self-reliance and helping neighbors. But his protective instincts had been tempered by personal loss. His ranch provided modest but secure living through careful management and hard work. Previous experience with his wife's difficult pregnancy and death gave him understanding of women's physical vulnerability and emotional strength that most frontier men lacked. His decision to help Isabella came from moral conviction rather than romantic interest, though her courage and grace under pressure gradually awakened feelings he'd thought permanently buried. Their growing connection defied social conventions, requiring women to remain with legal husbands regardless of treatment. Isabella's legal status as married woman made any relationship with Jedediah scandalous, while his protection of her threatened established masculine authority structures. External challenges included potential return of her abusive husband, community disapproval of their arrangement, and legal complications regarding marriage and property rights. Internal obstacles involved learning to trust after trauma and accepting that love could grow from sanctuary rather than courtship. Jedediah's first glimpse of Isabella, broken yet dignified in her desperate flight, triggered protective instincts shaped by his wife's memory and frontier code requiring aid to those in need. Her whispered confession about broken ribs and visible bruises revealed systematic abuse that outraged his sense of justice. His immediate response, offering sanctuary without questions or conditions, surprised both of them with its certainty. Isabella's flinch at his approach told story of conditioned fear, while her acceptance of help showed desperate courage of someone with no alternatives. Their first hours together established pattern of respectful distance and careful consideration. Jedediah's understanding that trauma required patience and space contrasted sharply with masculine aggression that had nearly killed her. His gentle handling and consistent respect began healing process before either recognized romantic potential. Isabella's gratitude mixed with hypervigilance as she tested his sincerity through small gestures and careful observation. His consistent kindness, without expectation of repayment, slowly convinced her that sanctuary might be genuine rather than trap disguised as rescue. Neither expected the growing comfort they found in shared silence and small domestic rituals. Trust developed through accumulated acts of consideration over several weeks. Jedediah's consistent respect for her boundaries, never entering rooms without permission, leaving doors unlocked so she felt free to leave. Asking no invasive questions proved his protection came without strings attached. Isabella's gradual assumption of household tasks demonstrated recovering confidence and desire to contribute rather than merely receive charity. Her careful movements around his space showed developing comfort while maintaining awareness of escape routes that trauma required. Evening conversations on the porch created safe space for sharing fragments of their histories. Isabella revealed pieces of her ordeal while Jedediah shared memories of his late wife, establishing common ground of loss and resilience. Both discovered pleasure in adult conversation after years of isolation. Physical healing paralleled emotional recovery. Her bruises faded as defensive walls gradually lowered. When she began humming while working and speaking gently to his horse, both recognized significant progress in her recovery. The night she checked the unlocked door, needing to confirm her freedom to leave, became turning point in their relationship. His understanding response without taking offense proved his respect for her autonomy was absolute. Isabella's legal status as married woman created immediate obstacle to any romantic relationship, while community suspicion about their living arrangement threatened both their reputations. Her husband's potential return presented physical danger that could destroy their growing connection through violence. Internal barriers proved equally challenging. Isabella's trauma-induced hypervigilance made emotional vulnerability terrifying, while Jedediah's grief over his wife's death complicated feelings for another woman. Both struggled with guilt, hers about leaving marriage, his about moving beyond widowhood. Social pressure mounted during their first town visit when whispers and stares reminded them of community judgment. Their arrangement violated social conventions requiring proper courtship and marriage before cohabitation. Most challenging was growing attraction. Neither could acknowledge admitting romantic feelings might complicate the sanctuary relationship that had saved her life and given him purpose beyond mere survival. Over the summer months, Jedediah and Isabella evolved from protector-protected to equal partners sharing domestic and ranch responsibilities. She assumed household management while he handled livestock and crops, creating efficient division of labor that respected both their capabilities and limitations. Their decision-making became collaborative, discussing supply needs, planning garden improvements, coordinating town visits for maximum safety. Isabella's insights about household efficiency, combined with Jedediah's ranching experience, created partnership that enhanced both their lives. Most significantly, they began planning for potential future together rather than merely surviving present crisis. During a sudden summer storm that required them to work together, protecting livestock, Isabella laughed the first genuine joy Jedediah had witnessed from her, her surprised delight at her own laughter, followed by his answering smile, marked emotional turning point, where healing became happiness. That evening, as they sat on rain-soaked porch steps, Isabella asked if he'd ever considered remarrying. His honest response that he'd thought about keeping someone because he wanted to, not because he had to, opened door to acknowledging feelings both had been suppressing. Their first intentional romantic moment came through shared recognition of mutual desire for permanent partnership. Physical connection developed gradually through meaningful touches that respected Isabella's trauma while acknowledging growing attraction. Jedediah's gentle care when binding her healing ribs contrasted with violence she'd endured, teaching her that male touch could bring comfort rather than pain. Casual contact during daily activities, hands touching while passing items. Standing close while working built natural intimacy. Isabella's growing comfort with voluntary physical proximity demonstrated healing while encouraging deeper connection. Her spontaneous touch on his arm for balance during their return from town, and her lingering contact, marked intentional romantic gesture that acknowledged changed relationship dynamics. The confrontation came when Isabella's husband tracked her to Jedediah's ranch, demanding her return as his legal property. The encounter revealed the systematic violence she'd endured while highlighting legal powerlessness of women in abusive marriages. Her husband's claims of ownership versus Jedediah's assertion of her right to sanctuary created direct conflict between legal authority and moral obligation. Community pressure intensified after the confrontation became public knowledge. Some neighbors supported Jedediah's protection of vulnerable women, while others condemned their arrangement as immoral interference in legal marriage. Social division threatened both their reputations and economic security as business relationships became strained. Legal complications arose regarding Isabella's marital status and property rights. Her husband's threats of legal action to recover his stolen property created uncertainty about their future security and potential criminal charges against Jedediah for harboring another man's wife. Economic pressure mounted as some community members boycotted Jedediah's services, reducing ranch income while increasing costs of maintaining larger household. Their need for supplies required careful navigation of hostile social environment. Most dangerously, Isabella's husband's departure felt temporary rather than final resolution. His parting assessment of the situation suggested he was planning more effective strategy for reclaiming control over her, creating ongoing threat that prevented either of them from feeling completely secure. Isabella's transformation from frightened victim to confident partner reflected love's power to heal trauma through consistent respect and support. Jedediah's patient protection without expectation of romantic reciprocation rebuilt her trust in masculine goodness while allowing her to rediscover her own strength. Her growing assertiveness defending her right to make choices, contributing to household decisions, meeting community judgment with steady courage showed recovery that transcended mere physical healing. Love taught her that she deserved respect and partnership rather than subservience. Jedediah learned that opening his heart again didn't diminish his late wife's memory, but honored it by using lessons learned through loss to create new love. Protecting Isabella gave his life deeper purpose, while her presence filled emptiness he'd accepted as permanent. Together, they discovered that love built on mutual respect and shared survival could be stronger than conventional romance, creating foundation for partnership that could withstand any external pressure. The crisis escalated when Isabella's husband returned with territorial martial and legal documents requiring her return to Kansas for court proceedings regarding their marriage and property disputes. Armed with proper legal authority, he could no longer be simply turned away from Jedediah's gate. "She's my legal wife," he declared to the marshal, "and this man is harboring stolen property." The marshal's reluctant agreement with legal technicalities forced Isabella to choose between voluntary return or being taken by force, with Jedediah facing arrest for interference with legal marriage. Isabella's decision to comply voluntarily, sparing Jedediah imprisonment and potential violence, recreated the original trauma of powerlessness against systematic abuse. Her whispered promise to find way back couldn't disguise reality that legal system supported her husband's claims regardless of evidence of abuse. Watching her leave in the custody of man who'd nearly killed her destroyed Jedediah's faith in justice while proving that love couldn't always overcome legal authority. Her courage in protecting him by surrendering herself demonstrated the depth of her feelings while highlighting brutal reality of women's legal status. Their separation felt like amputation, sudden, violent removal of part that had become essential to whole. Both faced future that seemed impossible to navigate alone after discovering partnership's transformative power. Back in Kansas, Isabella endured her husband's renewed control while navigating legal system designed to support masculine authority regardless of women's welfare. Court proceedings focused on property rights and marital obligations, rather than documented evidence of systematic abuse. Her survival required resuming defensive behaviors she'd begun to overcome: hypervigilance, emotional withdrawal, strategic submission to avoid triggering violence. But months with Jedediah had strengthened her core sense of worth, making complete surrender to victimhood impossible. She began documenting fresh injuries and seeking witnesses to current abuse, hoping to build legal case for separation despite laws favoring marital unity. Her growing legal knowledge, gained through necessity, provided tools for potential future escape. Jedediah's isolation and determination alone at the ranch Jedediah struggled with depression and rage at legal system that prioritized property rights over human dignity. His isolation felt worse than before Isabella's arrival because he now understood what partnership could mean. He began systematic campaign to gather evidence of Isabella's husband's violence, interviewing neighbors and documenting patterns of abuse that might support legal intervention. His military connections provided access to information about changing federal attitudes toward domestic violence. Rather than accepting defeat, Jedediah channeled grief into strategic planning for Isabella's eventual rescue, legal or otherwise. His determination to protect her transcended romantic feelings, becoming moral crusade against systematic injustice. After 4 months of legal proceedings, Isabella's husband's escalating violence provided evidence even biased courts couldn't ignore. Her systematic documentation of fresh injuries, combined with witness testimony Jedediah helped gather, created legal foundation for separation proceedings. When she sent coded message requesting help during brief window of opportunity, Jedediah didn't hesitate. Love demanded action. Regardless of legal consequences, he would rather face imprisonment than abandon her to continued abuse. Their reunion would require legal marriage to establish his authority to protect her under territorial law. Isabella's escape came during court recess, when her husband's violent reaction to unfavorable testimony provided opportunity for flight. Jedediah's presence outside the courthouse, timed through careful intelligence gathering, enabled immediate departure before pursuit could organize. Their flight back to Wyoming became race against legal authority and private vengeance. Isabella's husband's pursuit, armed with territorial marshals and private investigators, created life or death stakes for their relationship's survival. "Marry me now," Jedediah said during their desperate journey, "so I have legal standing to protect you." Their impromptu ceremony, performed by sympathetic justice of peace who'd witnessed Isabella's court testimony, transformed their relationship from sanctuary arrangement to legal partnership with recognized authority. The final confrontation came at Jedediah's ranch when pursuing forces arrived to reclaim Isabella. But her legal marriage to Jedediah, combined with documented evidence of her husband's violence, had changed power dynamics fundamentally. Standing together in their ranch yard, legally married and supported by sympathetic neighbors who'd witnessed Isabella's transformation, they presented a united front that even hostile legal authority couldn't easily overcome. "She's my wife now," Jedediah declared, showing their marriage certificate. "Any business you have is with both of us." Isabella's confident stance beside him, no longer cowering but standing as equal partner, demonstrated transformation that impressed even skeptical observers. Her former husband's rage at losing control revealed character that validated every accusation she'd made. His public display of violence toward women, now legally protected by another man, turned community opinion decisively against him while proving Isabella's truthfulness about abuse. When he finally departed, defeated by legal technicalities and community pressure, Isabella and Jedediah had won more than personal victory. They'd proven that love could overcome systematic oppression when supported by law and community. Their legal marriage ceremony, held weeks later in Wyoming with full community attendance, celebrated not just personal love, but victory over institutional injustice. Isabella wore her mended green dress with flowers from her garden, symbolizing growth from broken beginnings to beautiful completion. Community support for their union reflected changed attitudes about domestic violence and women's rights. Their courage in fighting legal system had inspired other abused women to seek help while educating neighbors about realities of marital violence previously ignored. Economic security followed community acceptance boycotts ended as neighbors recognized their moral courage, while Isabella's skills contributed to ranch prosperity. Their partnership proved that marriages based on mutual respect created stronger foundations than those built on legal coercion. Federal attention to their case contributed to evolving legislation regarding women's rights in marriage and divorce proceedings. Their successful challenge to abusive husbands' legal authority helped establish precedents protecting other women in similar circumstances. Most importantly, their love had survived testing that proved its authenticity. Separation had demonstrated that their connection transcended convenience or necessity, while legal victory validated their choice to build life together despite social pressure. Their wedding night in their own cabin, finally safe and legally protected, represented complete healing from trauma through transformative power of love. Isabella's laughter echoing through rooms where she'd first found sanctuary marked journey from victim to beloved partner. Their successful legal challenge influenced Wyoming Territory's progressive approach to women's rights, contributing to its early adoption of women's suffrage and expanded legal protections for married women. Their case became precedent for other domestic violence prosecutions. Educational impact spread through women's rights organizations that used their story to demonstrate need for legal reforms protecting abused wives. Isabella's transformation from victim to advocate inspired other women to seek help rather than accepting abuse as inevitable. Legal precedents from their case strengthened federal laws regarding interstate domestic violence and married women's property rights. Their victory helped establish framework for protecting women who fled abusive marriages across territorial boundaries. Community attitudes changed as their successful partnership demonstrated benefits of marriages based on equality rather than masculine dominance. Other couples began adopting their model of mutual respect and shared decision-making. Economic development followed their business success. Integrated ranching operations that utilized both partners' skills proved more profitable than traditional male-dominated systems. Their model influenced territorial policies, supporting family-based agricultural development. Their story became teaching example in churches and schools about moral obligation to protect vulnerable people regardless of legal technicalities. 20 years later, Wyoming's statehood constitution included domestic violence protections directly influenced by their case. Most significantly, their love story proved that individual courage could challenge systematic injustice when supported by evolving legal framework and community support. Their marriage became symbol of frontier justice, protecting weak against strong. Within 1 year of their marriage, 3 other abused women in their district sought help escaping violent marriages, inspired by Isabella's successful legal victory and community support. Their ranch became informal sanctuary, where desperate women found temporary shelter and practical advice about legal options. Local attitudes toward domestic violence shifted dramatically as community witnessed Isabella's transformation from frightened victim to confident partner. Men began questioning treatment of their own wives, while women gained courage to report abuse previously accepted as normal. Economic benefits spread as their successful partnership model influenced other couples toward more collaborative marriages. Ranching operations that utilized wives' skills alongside husbands proved more prosperous than traditional arrangements, creating incentive for treating women as partners rather than property. Federal legislation protecting women's rights in marriage and divorce proceedings drew partly from precedents established by their legal victory. Wyoming Territory's progressive stance on women's issues, including early suffrage adoption, reflected attitudes influenced by successful cases like theirs. Educational programs developed around their story taught about recognizing and addressing domestic violence. Churches and schools used their example to demonstrate moral obligation to protect vulnerable community members regardless of legal complications. Legal reforms making it easier for women to obtain divorces from abusive husbands partially traced to evidence gathered during Isabella's case. Their victory helped establish federal jurisdiction over domestic violence cases involving interstate flight. 25 years later, Wyoming's statehood constitution included comprehensive domestic violence protections that legal scholars traced directly to precedents established by their marriage case. Their love story became foundational example of frontier justice protecting individual rights against systematic oppression. Their marriage evolved into legendary partnership characterized by mutual respect, shared goals, and continued advocacy for vulnerable people. Isabella's recovery from trauma inspired her work counseling other abuse survivors, while Jedediah's protection experience influenced his community leadership. They raised 4 children who grew up understanding that marriage meant partnership based on equality rather than domination. Their family demonstrated that homes built on love and respect created stronger foundations than those based on fear and control. In old age, they were honored as a couple whose love had helped transform territorial attitudes toward women's rights. True love provides sanctuary where healing can occur. But lasting happiness requires courage to fight for justice when love alone isn't enough. The strongest marriages are founded on mutual respect and shared commitment to protecting each other from any threat.